Get 5 coffins ready.
Hey everyone, welcome to my guide for the Morrigan. The Morrigan is a high skill floor assassin style mage with the ability to transform into any god in the current match with her ultimate. She's a fearsome goddess who's been relevant ever since she came out, making her a great choice to pick up for the mid lane. That said, when I say she's hard, she is hard. But let's start with the simple stuff with her builds. Morrigan's ultimate has an insane cooldown, so while you want some CDR, really what you need from Morrigan is pure burst. And Polynomicon, especially after getting buffed recently, is a shoo-in for her. Relics wise, you can really only do beads and Aegis. There is some merit to blink beads, but really if the best players in the world need beads Aegis to survive as the Morrigan, you will too. So let's dive into the Morrigan starting with her passive. Every third hit of Morrigan's basic attack chain will end in an AoE blast, which deals 9% of every target hit's max HP over 3 seconds. So an awesome little extra to have, but naturally a little hard to play around. It's most effective in the early 2v2 scuffles in mid lane and of course while clearing waves, stacking the waves with their basics and then letting this AoE hit all the melees while staggering the wave. From then on, it starts to play a background role where you only want to use it as a win more option, as in when a trade is already going in your favor and you can afford to stand there basic attacking 3 whole times on someone. As I mentioned though, Morrigan is an assassin style character, so you want to focus on doing your main burst combos first and then save this passive as a little add-on. One of the main reasons Morrigan is an assassin style mage is her first ability. Morrigan winds up and enters a ready stance, where she's able to either activate this ability, damaging and stunning all enemies in the triangle area, or can deactivate this ability at any time for no mana cost and no cooldown. So this is an awesome ability when it hits. So naturally the first issue arises in the simple things, the ability's cast time and its stubby size. So you can only hit it when in the enemy's face, and since any form of hard CC will stop the ability completely, you gotta get it done the first time you cast it. Not the easiest job since the ability has a very loud telltale sound effect accompanied with its activation. This is less of an issue when using it defensively. This is pretty simple, but don't forget that you can activate it while running away, then quickly turn for the stun for some self-peel, so you don't have to just sit there backpedaling while this ability comes out. We're not done with this ability, but using the ability on its own only comes up every now and again. So when you gotta use it on its own, use it. But typically you want to use it with your third or even second ability. Morrigan fires out a long range projectile which passes through enemies and walls, marking all enemies hit for 8 seconds. Enemies who are marked can have this mark expunged by any damaging abilities from Morrigan or any of her allies. And naturally, the mark lasting for 8 seconds and the base cooldown being 6 means that you can pop the mark with this ability, but if popped this way, the target will not be remarked. Still though, this ability is stellar through and through. Spammable, decent wave clear, and an incredible follow-up to literally anything your team is doing, as well as good damage boost on your first ability. There's not much to say about this ability other than use it. A lot. It's fast, goes far, has a low cooldown, and while the damage isn't exceptionally high, it just keeps coming up over and over and over again. It's one of those rare abilities that right out of the gate you can use for both poke and wave clear consistently. It'll take some time to get the timing down, because of course you don't want to have this ability on cooldown once the wave comes, but you can really just clear the wave and immediately start looking for poke when it comes to this ability. But back to using it in tandem with your first ability. So after someone's marked, you've got 8 seconds to play with to get in and use your first ability, but just walking up to them is never going to work, so how do you get in? That's where Morrigan's third ability comes into play. Morrigan spawns a clone of herself that walks to the designated location, this clone being killed by any damage or CC that hits her. Once the clone is spawned, Morrigan becomes invisible and gains movement speed. Morrigan's invisibility will be broken if she takes damage, uses any of her abilities, basic attacks, relics, or is CC'd. However, she is still able to activate her first ability while stealthed. As for how to place your clone, in high tension situations it really doesn't matter, and in general it's fine to switch between making it go in the opposite direction of you and go in the same direction as you. So finally, here is how you get in to use your first ability. First and foremost though, be aware of how loud your first ability is when it's activated. While being invisible for up to 5 seconds with a hefty move speed bonus does let you get up to all sorts of shenanigans, a loud activation of your first ability will immediately put you out and make you easier to react to. So while you're invisible and going in for a combo, you need to activate and use your one all in one fell swoop. But keep in mind that you can continue using your movement speed as you have your one activated, so you can learn the timing between activation and usage of your one while using that move speed. But this is of course quite risky, and if you land your second ability, it means that what you'll be trying to do while stealth is all the more predictable. So you'll want to mix it up with every cast of your third ability to keep things unpredictable. Go invis, get to mid-range to confirm your 2, and then just back off. Then the next time, go invis and do nothing. Then once you feel you've conditioned them, that's when you go in for a stun. That said, while these mind games are great in a vacuum, spamming your invis once you're out of the laning phase, or for that matter in the laning phase against an aggressive jungler, is a death sentence. For escaping, the movement speed while invisible is all Morrigan has to try and mount escapes. So get too aggressive or simply use your invis at all at the wrong time and you'll immediately be jumped on. So this is what makes Morrigan's base combos and playstyle difficult. It's not difficult to 2, 3, walk up in 1, then chase with your 2 after that. It's choosing when to perform it and also when you perform the aforementioned mind games with her invis that takes a lot of solid SMITE fundamentals to really get the most out of, especially against any mildly formidable players. But while Morrigan's base abilities are tough for new players to perform well with, it's nothing compared to her ultimate. Let's start with the basics. Activating Morrigan's ultimate will open up this menu, showing all the gods in the current match other than the Morrigan herself. Unfortunately, however, depending on your cast type, the way you interact with this menu will change. If you use normal casting, pressing your ability 4 button will bring up the menu for you to interact with, and clicking on a god will turn you into them, and you can cancel the menu at any time by pressing the cancel ability button. If you use quick or instant casting, however, you have to hold down the ability 4 button, as simply pressing and releasing the button will make you turn into whatever god you happen to land on. So in this case, you hold down the ability 4 button and move your mouse or right stick around to select a god, then release the ability 4 button to become them. And again, of course, press the cancel ability button to stop this at any time. In both instances, however, you may hover over a god's icon, then cancel the ability to set them as your next transformation. When done this way, users of instant cast need to only press the ability 4 button once to transform it into the selected god, while users of normal cast must still use this menu to select the god each time. So while instant cast is a bit more fiddly, it's definitely how you want to use this ability, as the best god to transform into in a given match is usually defined by whatever their ultimate ability is. That's only half the story though. Masters of the Morrigan rarely rely solely on the pre-selected god, and are changing which god they turn into to match the situation, which yes, is extremely difficult if you haven't played every god in the game at least once. But let's quickly touch on what you can do while transformed. Morrigan will transfer her current relics in leveling order over to the selected god, yet another thing to keep in mind while selecting god to play as at a given time in the match. She can use any and all of the god's abilities and is given their current build. So if you have a high impact target to turn into when they're fed, you'll be fed, and if they're behind, you'll be behind when transformed. And yes, if you have your 2 on a target, you will be able to pop the mark as the transformed god. Morrigan stays as the god for 12 seconds and cannot end the ultimate early. After 12 seconds, or after any channeled ability is finished channeling past the 12-second mark, Morrigan is forced back into her normal form, sort of popping at the back. So there are actually some long-lasting channeled abilities like Guan Yu Ultimate or Odin 3 that let you extend the amount of time you're in the other god's shoes, but you don't want to do this every time, as your ultimate will only go on cooldown once the Morrigan has shifted back to her normal state. Speaking of which, if the Morrigan's ultimate cooldown is lower than the god she was transformed into, her ultimate's cooldown will be increased to match it, hence why forcing CDR on her is kind of a moot point. The Morrigan's ultimate is extremely hard to write for her, so here's just a bunch of gods with extremely high impact ultimates that you're going to want to know if you want to play the Morrigan well. But again, the Morrigan is best played when she's constantly choosing new gods to transform into to match the situation. So what I'm going to do here is take a look at a few plays from one of the best Morrigan Pro matches and give commentary over what's happening, as it shows very clearly how to use the Morrigan in a variety of fights. So first things first here, a big shout out to Betty, SMITE Esports here. If you haven't checked out his channel before, you absolutely should. Let's get into the clip. So here, SSG, the red team, are the Gold Fury, and Mask is coming over here to stop them, just by pressuring them out. So he walks straight up to them, blinks in, and gets exploded, basically. But here comes Baskin. Basically pops his 2 on literally everyone. That was mostly because they stacked up, but as you can see, he ulted into the Raven, then ulted in as Raven, popping the mark on the Ganesh, but keep in mind those marks are still on the Thor and the Ho Yi. So he goes over to the Ho Yi. They try and turn on him, but that was actually pretty smart. That was the only ability he could have used at that particular distance to pop his Morrigan 2, but watch this, he just turns around and uses his 2, the immunity, to pop his Morrigan 2 on him. I thought that was smart. So, a little bit on Zapman there for turning around, that was a little funny. But of course at the time, Raven was pretty much the best option for him, because he was able to read that he needed a god that could get in there quickly and deal a lot of damage. But even though Thor was fed at this point, using the Thor ult probably would have taken too long, and he wouldn't have been able to use his Morrigan 2 that effectively with it. On paper, someone like a Xing Chen may have been better, because Xing Chen has this crazy, huge impact teamfight ultimate, but he just went in for the damage instead with a Raven, since he knew that the person actually playing Raven Mask had actually blown a lot of the enemy team's ultimates already, so he knew he wouldn't get blown up if he went in there. So he didn't need the extra tankiness from, say, a Xing Chen. Okay, so now here's an example of him swapping off of the Raven and going for someone else instead by reading the situation. So he was in mid lane here, and basically everyone was in Barracuda's lane again. AMC, he's gonna get dove, as you could probably tell, but the Morrigan is so far away. Look at this. Look how far he is. How is he supposed to get to this team fight? Well, just watch. So he takes a pretty good path there, tries to stay off wards, and boom. he swapped into a Thor instead. So now he has a global ultimate and can actually reach from here to the team fight. So he lets them dive a little bit, and he wants to keep them on their toes, right? They don't know where the Morrigan is just yet, so they're letting them try to dive a little bit, get them as deep as possible. Then when they try and retreat, boom, he drops in with a Thor ult. Boom, bap. See? That's nice. And then he just has to kind of back off. But that's a good example of him using somebody else to make up for the situation, because obviously Robin's a lot quicker, so if like you're in the midst of a team fight, you don't want a Thor ult, right? You don't want a Thor ult in the middle of a team fight. But in that situation, when he was a little bit behind, he swapped into the Thor and used that global ultimate. Okay, so this here to me stuck out as the best example of how to Morrigan, essentially, in a team fight. So here, he has his support and his assassin. They're converging on this Thor here. So he pops his stealth extremely early. At this point in the game, he's going to have the full 5-second stealth. And he pops his one pretty much as soon as he stealths. This way, he keeps the people he's actually trying to go on from hearing that activation of his first ability. So he has his one activated here while he's still stealthed. And then just jumps on this guy and then uses the 2 on him. So then the double 2 proc comes out and does a boatload of damage. So here, the fight is breaking out over here as well, so what he does is he goes into this corner here, and he's going to change into Thor again and use that ultimate. Just like a Thor would try and be over here, but the thing is, a Morrigan wouldn't want to be over here. She'd more be like over here trying to toss out ones over and over again, but instead he goes over here to use his Thor ultimate. So in that sense, he's sort of completely flipping his mindset around into becoming a Thor player for 12 seconds. But anyways, he makes a huge impact here with the Thor ult, dunks on both of the squishies, and they're able to do a bunch of damage to Zap. Boom. Pretty much perfect usage of the Thor ultimate there. So what I think makes this clip so important is it just shows Morrigan at her best, because Basking was able to both use her basic abilities to show off that assassin mage playstyle, but then is also able to turn into a high impact character and make another huge impact in the fight. And it shows the extreme strength of Morrigan, since if she's able to get her base abilities off, she has a strong impact, and then if she gets her ultimate off, she has another enormous impact on a team fight. Now sometimes, as you saw, she will quickly turn into one character and basically won't be able to use her base abilities. But getting the most out of the Morrigan means using her base abilities to make an impact in the fight, as well as using your ultimate. For leveling, you want your 2 at level 1, your 1 at level 2, your 2 again at level 3, and your 3 at level 4. From there you can level your 2, your 1, then your 3, and your ultimate whenever you can. There's a case to be made as well for leveling your 3 to rank 3 after your 2 is maxed in order to get 4 seconds of stealth, but this is down to personal preference. The Morrigan is the hardest god in SMITE. End of story. An assassin playstyle on a god who has the health of a wet paper towel with no instant movement to speak of, and if you can transform into a god with good escapes, you still need fast fingers to get your ultimate out before you die. And yeah, again, the ultimate. If you're new to SMITE, it's going to be extremely difficult to get the most out of, or even close to the most out of the ultimate, when you have limited knowledge of the gods in SMITE. Morrigan is a god that puts all of your skills to the test. Your god knowledge, matchup knowledge, awareness, spacing, and of course your mechanical ability on literally every god in the game, including Morrigan herself. It's a tall mountain to climb, but I wouldn't go so far as to say it's not worth it. Learning the Morrigan means learning SMITE. She forces you to learn how other roles and more importantly individual gods play the game, so you not only equip yourself with the knowledge of how to play them, but how to play against them too. Of course, she should definitely come later into your SMITE career, but the earlier you can start learning the Morrigan, the better. Not to mention, she's been a good god balance-wise ever since she was released, so it's not like you'll be getting a mediocre god out of it for your efforts either. That's all I have on the Morrigan for now. Thanks for watching. This is a test. Oh!